Percy Austin, Charles William Errington,
George Morley,
William Money,
John Willie Potter,
Ernest Lawrence Miles,
Frederick Hills,
William James Rowlett,
Frank Straber,
George Henry Bradshaw, Arthur Samuel Burroughs,
Harold Percy Patrick,
William Palmer,
Arthur Foster,
Frank Meadows, James Pewless, Alfred John Clark,
Arthur Thomas Simmons,
Ernest Leonard Cadd,
George Robert Robinson, Every Wilford,
William Clough,
Frederick Stapleton,
Harold William Walker,
Thomas Henry Wilkes,
Harold Robinson,
Fred Selby Townsend,
Frederick Marshall.
Each flower a life, each life a name, each name a man, with family, friends and neighbours, a man who once lived and loved and breathed this air and walked the streets of Corby. But how true is our memory? We use memorabilia to visit yesteryear, photos, books, the internet, and objects we hold dear. Official dusty diaries all have their part to play, to reconstruct a life that's gone and ponder at its ways. Diaries tell it how it was. Your mind fills in the blanks. There's stories told by word of mouth, so pass them on with thanks. For when, 100 years from now, someone looks back and asks, our heritage is what they'll find, are we up to the task?
We'd go later. When I finished here.
Sam, look, this isn't going to take long, and think about it. If we do what Nana wants, me and you are going to get a pair of new shoes. Not shoes, you know you want to.
Excuse me. I've got some information about my husband's family. I wonder if you'd be interested in taking a look at it. They're an old Corby family, born and bred.
I'd love to talk to you, but I haven't got a lot of time now at the moment. I've only just arrived, I've got things to do. But there's plenty to look at in the main room, and you can get a coffee if you'd like in the cafe.
Yes, all right.
Come this way then.
I know.
This way, girls.
Constantly.
And have a look round. Well, thank you.
Can you imagine what it was like in school 100 years ago?
Obviously, they didn't have interactive whiteboards now, did they?
That's true. They used to write on slates, which were hung around the kids' necks in case they dropped them. It was really crowded, with two at a desk in a class of 46, or on the back in benches. In the nursery, there were 36 babies crammed into a room built for 24, with an unqualified monitoress. Boys and girls were in separate rooms. Water running down the walls. It sounds like the kind of things kids in the third world have to deal with. It was really unhealthy.
What? Like those Oxfam pictures?
Yes, something like that.
Why was it so bad?
Well, it had been built for fewer children when Corby was smaller. The problem was there was really poor sanitation in the village, and that, combined with the overcrowding, meant there was continuous outbreaks of infection cleaning people to stop the germs.
Did it work?
Well, there was no treatment, and it took 6 years and many deaths before they finally closed the school down in 1915.
But why did it get so overcrowded?
Well, it was a bit like now. In 1881, there was 758 people living in Corby. By 1911, that had doubled.
How do you know how many people there were? Is it like from census and stuff?
Yes. And
How was
diary.
that?
Come over here. I'm Mrs. Clark, the vicar's wife, and I keep a diary.
1,560.
Building is going on rapidly in the village. Nearly 40 new homes have been recently erected, and many others are in contemplation.
Aren't we doubling our population again at the moment?
Yes, and then, just like now, the services weren't ready for such a population rise and were bursting at the seams whilst they tried to catch up.
Why did people first come to Corby?
Well, people came for jobs. Originally, the majority of the Corby families were in handloom weaving, but that industry died in 1850. Everybody was out of work, there was real poverty, and no prospect of anything else.
Steelwork.
You can
Oh, that
listen.
sounds like when the steelwork was closed in the 80s. Does, you know,
Yes.
about the industry?
Yes, well, it was only when the railways were built, and then they were making bricks for the railways, that brought people in. Then the iron ore was discovered. That led to the blast furnaces being built, and that brought more workers in. Now, you can read, this exhibit has diary extracts from around 100 years ago, my diary, and the Reverend Bartlett's. You can listen to it here.
Sited at Corby were 50 huts that housed the navvies. Each hut contained 7 men. Some men were accompanied by women with children under 16 years of age. In addition to the huts was a shanty township, and some of the men lodged in the village.
Didn't Grandad say you lived in huts when you first came to Corby?
Oh yeah, he lived in the Brigstock camp in the 30s. You see, he came here for the steelworks, and he used to tell me all about men who were sharing the same digs. They'd also share the same bed on alternate ships, you know, like how the foreigners are supposed to do now.
Very funny how history repeats itself.
You know what you just told us about new schools and illnesses? It's the same now too.
But what do you mean?
Well, we've had lots of new schools opening recently. They're pulling down the old ones. And we had an outbreak of TB at our school last year.
Oh yes, you're right. My son got that last year. Do you know Corby's always been a TB hotspot?
That's right. My aunt used to work up at the TB sanatorium in Rothwell where the patients went.
But Corby's always in the paper because of its poor health profile.
Yes, but at least we've got decent sewage now, and there was a battle to get that. There were records of the inquiry. My husband, Reverend Clark, was on the panel. And Mr. Lambert said that he didn't really see why we needed decent sewers because 95% of the population are of the labouring class.
Yes. They recommended we continue to use what they called the peel method.
What? Shit in a bucket? Gross!
Anyway, that doesn't tell you anything about what school was really like.
What subjects did they do?
Well, the head teacher was really keen on history, music and drama. There was more emphasis on domestic subjects for girls to prepare them for going into service or running home.
But like, what if they wanted to go to university or something?
Women weren't allowed to do degrees. Different expectations nowadays.
My grandfather was like that. Oh, yeah.
This is our amazing joy, isn't it?
Yeah, they were like, now they'd be working Friday morning.
Children from the labouring classes left school at 14. The boys went into the farm, fields and furnaces, and the girls went into service, but only until they got married.
That changed during the World War though, didn't it? Women had to do men's job whilst they were away. Saw an exhibition at the Imperial War Museum.
Well, that exhibit over there is all about what women in Corby done in the war. Oh, that looks like fun. Get them off. Yes, and we'll go down with it.
Picture books.
Yeah, would you get a copy then?
Yes, thank you.
Right, let's see what you've got.
Well, I've got the, this is the family tree. I've got some, and I have some photos. That's the Marshalls. And this is a gamekeeper's cottage where great-granddad lived. Yes. And this is the Fred Marshall Jr. who was killed in the First World War. His name's on the war memorial. And this is a picture of the Lloyd's Black Houses, as they were called, where his granddad lived. It was built for the ironstone workers, who were notoriously damp. And I've got this newspaper clipping from when his granddad died in 1955. He helped to build the first furnaces at Lloyd's, and he drove the first engine at Stewart's and Lloyd's. He was in the Corby Silver Band.
Oh, this is really interesting. Can I keep these?
Yes, of course.
I wish more people would do this. We need to collect people's stories before they take them to the grave.
Anyway, I'm going to go find my granddaughters. We've got some serious shopping to do.
Well, we're always trying to get youngsters to come in, so why don't you bring their friends down?
Oh, thank you.